The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome to the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum here in this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here from the broadcast center of the X-Zone Broadcast Network in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, it's very simple, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to see the broadcast schedule of the X-Zone Broadcast Network and see when and where you can listen to the X-Zone Radio and TV show, visit www.xzbn.net. Well, another day, another dollar. COVID is running crazy here in the province of Ontario. They officially put us in a second wave of COVID today with over 700 new cases over the last 24 hours. And in the province of Quebec, the numbers are higher. And officials are saying with the new computer simulation that they have, we should be reaching over 1,000 new cases a day by the end of the week. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, if anybody would have told me a year ago that we'd be in a pandemic, and I would have laughed. If anybody would have told me 6 months ago, or even 3 months ago, or even 2 months ago that we'd be looking at a second wave, I wouldn't have been so surprised. So please, whoever you are, wherever you are, to all the members of the X-Zone Nations, friends and families, stay healthy and take care of yourselves, please. My guest this hour is J.W. Ocker. He is the Lowell Thomas and Edgar Award winning author of macabre travelogues, spooky kids books, and horror novels. His books include A Season with the Witch, The Magic and Mayhem of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts, Death and Douglas, 12 Nights at the Rotter House, and his latest, Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. JW lives in New Hampshire, and you can visit his website at www.oddthingsiveseen.com. And JW, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
It's great having you with us, JW. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and what was it that drew you to this weird, strange, wonderful world that you and I call home?
You know what? I think it's because I found a lot of the world in my life boring, not very interesting. So obviously, I turned toward things that were a little bit more magical, a little bit weirder, a little bit stranger, a little bit off the wall.
Right.
Just because it seems like those things are just more fun to spend time on.
Now, have you had any strange, weird, or otherwise known as wonderful experiences in your life?
Here's I give you a disappointing answer to that question. Okay. The answer is no, unfortunately. But I always say it's only because I just haven't had the experience. For some reason, the paranormal doesn't like me as much as I like it. So I haven't gotten any good experiences, but that doesn't really change like how much I love the stories. I love the stories. I'll search them out. I've spent, I've done all the requisite things you're supposed to do to see the paranormal. I, stayed the night in abandoned asylums and jails and cemeteries and all that kinds of stuff. But for some reason, they just won't, Casper won't say hi to me. So I just keep going, seeing weird stuff and hoping one day it'll get weirder for me.
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate that because I have the same problem. People tell me I've gone on ghost hunts, I've gone on research things, I've gone on UFO watches, and yeah, still looking.
Right.
Still looking. Tell us a little bit about your new book. Strange what's Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. What was the inspiration behind this book?
So the inspiration behind this book was that I feel like cursed objects in the paranormal world are kind of not really paid attention to. They're not as interesting as like the word haunted, for instance, right? So me and my editor thought it was a good idea to go after this segment because, again, we looked around the literature. Nobody had really amassed all the stories of the most infamous cursed objects. Most did, very superficially and then listicles online, just the top 10 cursed objects or whatever. And it really, some of the stories are fascinating. So it just feel like it was a hole in the paranormal literature to have all these histories together in one book. So that's what we went after.
Okay, here's another yes/no question, okay? Do you believe in cursed objects? Are they real or are they something that a person just imagines that it's cursed, filled with coincidences or synchronicities?
I don't have a yes/no answer for that, but I will say, going into this book, I would have said no. They're just made up in people's minds and stuff. But then by the end of the book, I learned about the concept of nocebos. Do you know about nocebos?
Unless it's like a placebo, no, I don't.
It's the exact opposite of a placebo. So
really?
A placebo, so that was good insight there. A placebo is basically the body tricking itself into healing itself on a very minor pretense, right? Just the doctor saying this will help you. A nocebo is the body harming itself on a very minor pretense. So a doctor can give you medicine and say, hey, this medicine has these bad side effects. You'll hallucinate, you'll break out in hives, you'll have headaches. And even if the medicine doesn't actually have those side effects, your body can trick itself into having those side effects. So, anthropologists have used this idea to say this is why zombie or voodoo death happens, why people can think they're zombies and start becoming listless and, uncommunicative and lose their appetites, because their body has tricked them into doing that. So I think there's enough of a scientific veneer around this that a cursed object could actually bring harm to somebody if they, thought it would. So it's almost a mental it is a mental thing, but it still doesn't negate the idea that a cursed object can actually harm you.
So that's just like that would just be like a talisman that brings you good luck.
Exactly. It's exactly what that is. If you believe in a good luck charm, good luck can happen to you. It's just a fact of science and mysteries of the brain. It's not paranormal necessarily, but it works. So, it's exactly like that, which again is terrifying because cursed objects could be, your chair. Your chair could be the most mundane object can be cursed and just slip into your house. So knowing that and your brain, if the paranormal explanation is true, then that's it. But if the scientific explanation is true, you're still kind of screwed both directions with cursed objects.
But isn't that the premise behind the gypsy curse?
I think so. Yeah, the evil eye and those things are that you will, if the brain's powerful. The brain is also an agent against itself, often in thought and in action. And again, thinking you're in a bad place will put you in a bad place every single time.
I remember my wife telling our kids, "If you confess it, you will possess it." And I would say,
That's
"What
good.
the hell does that mean?" Well, she said, "Well, I'm just giving them the, the ability to." And I said, "Wish upon a star." She said, "Oh, do you have to talk like that?" "Yeah, I do." If you want to get woo, I'll get woo with you. But, the premise, as I saw it happening and working with the children in a positive effect, in a positive manner where they were using this, if you confess it, you will possess it, attitude in their schoolwork. Like it was, my God, they are smart.
Yeah. No, I'm firmly in the belief that tricking your brain is the way to succeed at anything, really.
Yeah, just like the media does these days.
That's another thing. Yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
No, Craig, I will not get into the debate that's going to be happening tomorrow. Everybody else is covering that. We won't hear. but it is going to be a paranormal event. One talking out of the grave and the other talking out of his butt. No, let's not go there. What kind of research did you do for your book? Did you actually go out and seek these cursed objects?
Oh, totally. So
Yeah.
because I've made kind of a semi-career out of searching out weird sites and places already, I'd actually visited a lot of what's in the book just even before I started the project. And that's one of the reasons why the publisher brought it to me, because they knew my past. But basically, it was going out and seeing what I could see. It was doing a lot of research, buying a lot of books, going into libraries, all the usual kind of research you would do. And then I also went as far as to buy a cursed object and bring one into my house during the entire project.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So there's a whole section in the book about the business of cursed objects, how, there's lots of museums that make a lot of money off cursed objects, and there's an entire trade of cursed objects on the good old eBay. If you type it in right now, I guarantee you there'll be 24 cursed dolls and cursed trinkets and cursed boxes all over the place. So I bought one of those. It came with a lot of warnings. Mine was a little brass bulldog and a paperweight, and I call it the cursed cur because all the best cursed objects that are worth their salt have some kind of cool name that sounds like it's out of a Sherlock Holmes title, right?
Right.
So Sherlock Holmes, in the case, the cursed cur. So I bought it on eBay. It came with a lot of warnings from the seller. She or he, I'm not sure, emailed me lots of warnings, let me know, I was taking on a big responsibility. When it came in the box, it was scrawled all over the box, all of these kind of warnings and potents. And, it was an experience, which I think in reality was what I was buying. I don't think probably either one of us thought this thing was cursed, but when you think in the movies, when they buy cursed objects, it's always at some, dim antique store, maybe in Chinatown, with tons of objects that the shopkeeper won't sell you or tries not to sell you. But today we don't have that. We have one-click purchases online. So to make up for that, the person that sold me this dog was, trying to give me an experience. Lots of warnings by email, lots of warnings in the box, just enough so I could start actually feeling trepidatious, which I did. I started being like, wait, is this going too far? Bringing one into my house, whether I believe or not, is that a step too far? So that's what I did. And I kept it on my desk the entire time. I took it with us on vacation. We went down to Florida for a week with that thing in my bag.
So you're responsible for the lousy weather down there. Gotcha.
Possible. But to me, it was fine. It was one of my better years, actually. So I don't know if I keep telling people that it's a dog, so it takes dogs a long time to kind of get used to their environment and be in themselves. So maybe one day, that cursed dog will really bite me on the ass,
But has anything negative happened?
No. Not to me personally.
No.
It seems like the world's a lot of negative things happening in the world right now. But I can't, again, but also this might be my own mental state kind of filtering it out and not being blind to the bad things that have happened. But I would say, the past year and a half that I've been working on the project, it's been good times for me. Again, personally, not in any other way.
Well, let's see. You bought it. If anything was going to happen in the way I look at it, it would have happened to you. Nothing's happened. So I think we could kind of say, well, this cursed object really isn't cursed. Very possible. It could even be blessed, like you were saying earlier. Yeah. It might have got the wrong label. I hope that you did. And I hope that you're, that your good luck continues and your writing continues and they keep on getting nominated for awards. And congratulations. Let me see. You've been awarded the Edgar Award for by Mystery Writers of America, Lowell Thomas Gold Award, Society of American Travel Writers, and the Lowell Thomas Silver Award, again by the Society of American Travel Writers. And congratulations on all those awards.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been very fortunate as far as that goes.
JW, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest of this hour, his website is oddthingsi'veseen.com. That's www.oddthingsi'veseen.com. And JW and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can always find out what's happening on the X-Zone Broadcast Network by going to www.xzbn.net. And for the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV, which is available on Roku and some other great platforms, visit www.simultv.com. Hey, gang, October is Halloween month here in the X-Zone, and we have a month jam-packed. We have people from all over Canada, the United States, who are going to talk to us about haunted, ghost, things that go bump in the night in the Halloween spirit. Don't go away. We'll be back on the other side of this break.
would do whatever he could. Preach a little gospel, sell a couple bottles of Dr. Good. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves, we'd hear it from the people of the town. They'd call us gypsies, tramps, and thieves. But every night all the men would come around and lay their money down.
Welcome back, everyone. J.W. Ocker is our special guest. His website is oddthingsiveseen.com. Besides the dog that you bought, the cursed dog that you bought, I didn't know how to explain that. Where else did you visit, and what other strange, weird, bizarre, cursed objects did you research for your book?
Well, I went to the kind of granddaddy of them all, the Hope Diamond, which is kind of like the iconic cursed object. It's small, it can get lost, it can get stolen. It's very expensive, so only like the richest people with the, most decadent lives have it in their lives, and has a very long history, a very long both paranormal and historical legacy. And it's just sitting in Smithsonian, D.C., like in a little glass case in the middle of a room, just spinning around. And it's one of the more popular exhibits there. And I grew up in D.C., so I grew up visiting this thing all the time. And there's always a crowd around it, always kind of hacksaw your way to it. But it represents the most cursed object in kind of the history of the lore. And yet here it is, kind of just shimmering under a light in the nation's capital.
Well, would you be able to give our listeners a little bit of the history of the Hope Diamond and then a little bit of the Cursed Hope Diamond tragedy or trilogies?
Sure. I mean, they're really entwined. The other thing I like about the Hope Diamond is not a lot of the lore. A lot of the lore isn't made up. It's just, they're facts in the case, as opposed to some of these cursed objects where they have a real history that are documented and then stories kind of wound around that. But it's centuries old. It started out in Indian mines, which were most gemstones hundreds of years ago started there, because we only thought diamonds were in India at the time. So it started there. A merchant bought it. It went to the French royalty, so it became one of the French crown jewels. It was cut down over the years into, it was a giant rock, and then it became like a nice, elegant, stone over the years. It was smuggled out of France, ended up in England at some point. Went to a jeweler, Cartier, the famous Cartier of Cartier diamonds, and he's kind of the guy that really hooked the kind of curse really around it. The curse around the Hope Diamond was kind of there. It had been printed about in newspapers and such, but it came to America when Evelyn Wash, who was a socialite in D.C., she was rich, wealthy, buying lots of stuff, and he wanted to sell his Hope Diamond, but she had diamonds. She had a tub full of diamonds. She didn't need more diamonds. She wanted something a little more exotic than that. So this thing is cursed, and has wrapped all these stories around it. How all the royalty that died. So the French Revolution was kind of caused by the Hope Diamond. The royalty at that time both had their heads cut off because they wore the Hope Diamond. It had caused ruin to every kind of merchant who picked it up. It had been stolen from the eye of an idol out of India, which wasn't true. It had just been kind of bought after it was mined. And Evelyn Wash liked it so much that she bought the diamond. And then her life ended in a lot of tragedy. Her and her husband both divorced. They both ended up in asylums, died there. They had a child that died of suicide. So they were huge, wealthy socialites in D.C., but their lives completely ended in tragedy. But she was the most known person to have the diamond. She would wear it to parties. She turned it into a crown in her head. She let her pet wear it at one point. She tried to sell it to fund the search for the Lindbergh baby. So it was she brought a lot of promise to it. And then, of course, her life ended that way. Then it was sold to a couple of families, the Hope families, who bought it eventually. That's who it's named after. Right. And then they had a lot of, bankruptcies, as rich people do. They go through a lot of bankruptcies, so that's blamed a lot on the Hope Diamond. And then eventually it was given to the Smithsonian for, a tax break at the end of the day, or to start an American Crown Jewels. So it's a long history, and pretty much every single cursed gem. I outline about 8 different cursed gems in the book, and all of them have basically the same story. They start in India, they go through a merchant, they end up in somebody's crown jewels, whether it's the French, the English, the Scottish, the Russian, and then they end up going overseas to the American aristocracy often, which is, businessmen and actors. That's who the American aristocracy is. And then they all end up in museums. So right now, if you want to go see cursed gems, there's 7 of them in museums, open to the public, and then Black Orloff, is in private hands right now. But the rest of them are just on display, the most museum institutions in the world.
So let me ask you this. Is it the owner of the object who is cursed, or is it people who view the object that can also be cursed?
Oh, this is a great question. I love this question. So the owner is traditionally kind of the one that's supposed to be cursed.
Yeah.
But according to the stories, it's anybody who shows an interest. So right now, like me being a journalist around this topic,
Yeah.
There's lots of journalists who are in the curse story. Researchers, the Iceman out in Italy, is a
Right.
cursed object. All of his victims are scientists who are just kind of researching him. Some of them weren't even directly researching; they were just kind of researching him secondhand. So literally, just showing an interest. Photographers have cursed objects. The unlucky mummy in the British Museum has been photographed, and the photographer is supposed to have died. So showing an interest, which is exactly what the book is, showing an interest. And by the way, interviewing a person who wrote about a book about cursed objects is also showing an interest in the topic. So we're all kind of at harm here. We're all in danger talking about the topic a little bit.
So as well as the people who go to the Smithsonian to see it.
Yes.
My
yes,
goodness.
exactly. A plate of glass doesn't shield you from the curse just because it's on exhibit.
Funny, you can get bulletproof glass, but you can't get curse-proof glass.
No, you need some kind of a counter curse or a blessing to escape this.
Weren't there curses associated with the tomb of Tutankhamun?
Yes, a great curse. That's one.
Yeah.
If the Hope Diamond's the granddaddy, this is the other granddaddy. This is another one I got to see a lot of. I went to Egypt at one point, not for the book, but way in my past, where I got to see a lot of the Tutankhamun artifacts.
Right.
But this was a huge one. This is one that kind of made so it wasn't the first cursed mummy to ever come out of Egypt, but it was the one that kind of popularized it in the early 20th century. Without this mummy, we wouldn't have Boris Karloff shambling around in Hollywood. It basically killed visitors, killed people involved with the dig, anybody that kind of it's a cursed objects aren't automatic. Like they're kind of sometimes selective in who gets harmed. I mean,
Really?
which makes sense. They don't follow rules. It just whoever gets harmed. But the beauty of the Tutankhamun tomb and Tutankhamun artifacts curse is it all started because of a shaving accident.
A shaving accident? You mean as in somebody shaving their face?
Exactly. So what happened was, they knew that King Tut was around. The boy king was somewhere in the sand. They knew that, and they'd been searching for him for years, and they finally found him. And the person who funded the dig, Lord Carnarvon, he's the one who funded the dig and helped open the tomb, and they found it. They eventually, after kind of digging through and finding that it was untouched and there were treasures in there, they had to seal up the tomb for the season. I guess Egypt has archaeological seasons. I don't know if it's weather-based or legal-based, but they had to cover up the tomb and come back next season. So while he was waiting, he went to Aswan. And while he was there, something else I should say. So he sold the exclusive rights to cover the Tutankhamun uncovering to the Times in London. So they're the only ones allowed in the tomb up close. Every other reporter had to stay out behind, the velvet rope, the tourists and everybody else. Only one paper had access. So anyway, during the off season, he was in Aswan, and he got bit by a mosquito. While he was shaving one morning after that mosquito bite, he nicked it and then caught blood poisoning and died. So he died before they even found the body of King Tut. He saw only the treasures in the tomb. He didn't get to see the body. But what that did was all those newspapers that couldn't get a story because they weren't allowed inside, didn't need to be inside anymore. They had a story. They had the curse of the pharaohs. Lord Carnarvon, who is the one that funded this dig, is the first victim. And again, all because he was shaving one morning and wasn't careful around his mosquito bite.
Can you imagine
And from there, anybody that died connected to it is a curse.
Can you imagine being a child in Egypt and your mother says, "Go outside and play in the sand"? Where the hell did this kid go? I don't know. That just popped in my head when you were saying something about the sand. My mind went to the kid in the sand, and I wonder how many kids got lost in Egypt because their parents told them to go play in the sand. So basically, it's the people who create the story about the cursed object who actually curse it.
Yeah, in many ways. And I think that's kind of one of the values of cursed objects. Again, whether you believe in the paranormal or don't, the value of cursed objects is it's a physical thing to wrap stories around. So like Evelyn Wash, who we just talked about with the Hope Diamond, most of us wouldn't know her story at all. It wouldn't even be a blip on our radar if it wasn't for the Hope Diamond around her neck, right? So a lot of people's stories that we just forget about or, seem minor are stuck to a cursed object somewhere and kind of keep are able to keep being retold. They're all tragedies, of course.
Yeah.
All these stories are tragedies. But, again, the cursed object keeps them alive.
So it also keeps us attached to that point in history.
Yeah, exactly. Like the starting point of cursed objects is important. Where they are in the history is super important, to the point that it can get ridiculous. Like the Unlucky Mummy, which is a mummy board, the top of a sarcophagus, not even a mummy, it's just the top lid that's shaped like a mummy.
Yes.
It's in the British Museum, but it's been around so long that they've blamed the Titanic on it. They blamed World War II on it. They blamed all these visitor deaths on it. It's like if you're around long enough and you're prominent enough, you're kind of touching all of history in a certain kind of way.
I was just going to ask you about any cursed objects that are associated with the Titanic, and then I remembered reading something about part of the Tutankhamun exhibition was on the Titanic. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's the story. I don't think there was actually any mummies in the Titanic, but there are probably 3 or 4 stories about 3 or 4 different mummy objects that were supposed to be stored in the hold and, cause it to go down. What always comes out, though, is, if it went down with a ship, it's not around anymore, right?
Exactly.
The Unlucky Mummy's still around. All the Tutankhamun artifacts are still around. So in the Unlucky Mummy story, it sinks the Titanic, but somehow survives, goes to America for a while, then comes back to Europe, but sinks the ship that takes it back to Europe, which is another big tragedy. I can't remember the name of the ship offhand, but it was another big naval tragedy. And then ends up in a museum behind glass that any one of us can go see if we're in London. So it's a really hard one where if you sink a ship, you're probably not going to be around anymore. But then you lose that artifact and can't tell a cool story around it.
So how do you thwart the effects of a cursed object? Is there any way of exorcising it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you're talking to. One of the people I've interviewed in the past is John Zaffis. He's famous for his interest in haunted objects and cursed objects. He had a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called The Haunted Collector, where he would go to people's houses, but instead of, finding the ghosts like most of those reality shows, he would find the object that was causing all the kind of harm. And the way he did it, so he takes those objects and puts them in his house, basically. He has a house behind his house that he stores all of his collection. And the way he I can't remember the term he uses, but basically the way he unenergizes it is through prayer, sunlight, salt, crystals, so a lot of New Age stuff. And then he says that if he can't actually deactivate it, that's what it is, activation. If he can't actually deactivate it, then he'll throw it in the ocean. That usually does a good job of deactivating it. But other ways are all the counter curses, right? So the evil eye can be a curse, but it can also be a protection symbol. And I do a small section in the book about blessed objects, which is ways to fend off curse. That could be anything from a Catholic relic, to even a lot of the voodoo objects are both cursed objects, but also protection objects.
Got about a minute before we have to go to our news break at the bottom of the hour, but what part of the effectiveness of a cursed object is either thwarted or amplified by a person's religious beliefs?
Good question. It really depends on. I guess it can give it intelligence, right? So somebody from a Protestant or Catholic background would want to ascribe some kind of intelligence to the object, right? Make it a possessed object or a haunted object. While others more, that don't have such a belief in those kind of entities would think of a cursed object as just something malignant, something that kind of absorbed, dark energy and is now kind of projecting it out into the universe. So it kind of, I guess, probably depends on whether you want to personify it or not personify it.
All right, JW, please stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. And Exonation, our guest this hour is JW Ocker. And if you'd like to visit his website, www.oddthingsiveseen.com. We're talking to JW tonight about his latest book, and it's entitled to Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Money down. Picked up a boy just south of Mobile, gave him a ride, filled him with a hot meal. I was 16, he was 21. Rode with us to...
I took my troubles down to Madame Rue. You know that gypsy with the gold cap too. She's got a pad down a pretty broken pine, 7 little pies.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on satellite providers and program providers around the world. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and to check out the broadcast schedule for the X-Zone Broadcast Network and the great shows you can listen to 24 hours, 365, www.xzbn.net. And you can listen to past shows that we've done here on the X-Zone on our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And that's been the home of the website for the X-Zone radio and TV show for the past 30 years. Our guest is J.W. Ocker, and we're talking about cursed objects today. And my producer, during the break, whispered in my ear, he said, yeah, my wedding ring must be a cursed object. Gotta wonder about him. I've met his wife. During the writing of your book and doing the research for your book, was there anything that just blew you away? Something that you weren't expecting to find, but there it was.
Yeah, I think so. I would say it has to do with gold rings as well, honestly. There's this ring called the Ring of Silvianus that was found in the 18th century in a farm in England, right? It's a gold ring. It was a signet ring. It had a blessing engraved on it that was actually misspelled, and a person's name, which was Synesius, was on the actual ring. And it's not a big deal for a farmer to find, that kind of stuff in their fields. England has been around. The history of England is really deep, and that island is really small. So there's just layers and layers and layers of artifacts. So he found this ring. It got sold to a nearby family that put it on display in their house at the Vine. And then later, about 30 miles away, somebody found at a archaeological site called Dwarf Hill a defixio, which is a curse tablet. Basically, back then, the Romans that were in England would curse people by inscribing curses into small metal tablets, very thin metal tablets, and then giving them to a temple. And this archaeological site, this Dwarf Hill, was actually a temple to the god Nodens. And they found a defixio, and it cursed a man named Selenius for stealing a gold ring. So here they had the gold ring with the name, I'm getting these names mixed up, Sianus, and the actual defixio saying Sianus. So here they had a whole kind of curse story. Somebody stole a ring. We found the ring. Somebody cursed somebody. We found the curse. That is kind of like, it blows my mind for the age of it and how they put these pieces together. But then the real twist is that at some point in the 19th century, an archaeologist by the name of Wheeler wanted to know more about the god at this temple, Nodens. He wanted to know more about the name. There's an Anglo-Saxon kind of history to it. So he called up Oxford and was like, hey, I need an expert in Anglo-Saxon to tell me more about Nodens and to come out here and kind of look at this stuff for me. And he got connected with a guy named John Ryder Rule Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien. So this cursed ring was introduced to J.R.R. Tolkien. About a year later, he published The Hobbit.
Oh my gosh!
The ultimate cursed ring, in all of fiction, right? It's engraved just like the ring was, like the Ring of Silvianus was. And that's like an ending. I'm like, man, that is the whole story's cool, but then it ends with, oh my goodness, that cursed ring. We've all seen that poster, right? We've all read that book, and it all starts with an actual real cursed ring out in England.
You and I briefly talked about theology and a person's beliefs, religious beliefs. Are there any curses that you know of that are talked about in the Bible?
Yeah, the Bible's full of curses. I do have a bit of a religious background. I don't know if any objects were cursed. I would actually try to look through that as well. I mean, sometimes it says stuff like what's that spear that pierced Christ's side?
Oh,
that's
yeah,
the object.
The spear of
destiny.
Destiny, yeah.
That's one. I mean, it doesn't exist. I mean, you'll find splinters of it, I think, in about 8,000 churches across Italy, like every holy relic. But there's a lot of cursing. God was a cursor. He cursed entire people. He cursed, Lot's wife was a big curse.
Right.
Yeah, Adam and Eve's son, the one that gave the vegetable offering, that was another person that was cursed to wander the earth. So it's full of curses, but not so much cursed objects, which is kind of it's more of a it's probably more of a modern thing, the cursed object, really. I mean, they're all ancient. A lot of the cursed objects are ancient, but actually describing them as a cursed object in like a category is something that I think modern times we've done.
In your opinion, is there any one group of or region of the world where curses are more predominant than others, or the belief in curses is more predominant than others?
It's a good question. I mean, it's as far as curses themselves, it's probably pretty well spread. Just in looking through the book, everybody has some kind of, every culture has some kind of idea of a curse engraved in stone or metal. Every culture has this idea of miniature figures, puppets and voodoo dolls. I think we mostly call them these days. But every culture has this idea that you can inflict harm or blessing using a small, anthropoid object.
Mm-hmm.
Cursed objects as well. I mean, it was pretty much spread across the world what I found as far as cursed objects were, but there's a lot in the UK. For some reason, everything goes to the UK as far as Western history, so I guess that makes sense. But there's a lot of stuff out there that they have.
Was there anyone that you spoke to during the research for your book who actually was cursed?
I don't think so. I also don't know how many people would admit that to me. It's almost like saying, you have COVID. Like, you're not going to tell people that, right? You're going to hide it until you're better, and then maybe you'll still tell you if you're like The Rock or whatever, Tom Hanks, you'll tell people later.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a shame to be, to believe you're cursed and to admit it to people. You probably don't want people to know that.
What was the most curious cursed object that you came across and that you wrote about in your book?
Curious in what sense? Which direction are you going to send me?
Well, let's see. Something that people believed was cursed, but when you yourself looked at it, went, what are you talking about? Nah.
I'm going to give you the Dybbuk box. Have you heard this one?
No.
So this is a pretty famous one. This is a modern era cursed object. So it is supposed to be a Jewish wine cabinet. Full of various artifacts. There's like a little candelabra in there, some wax, some coins, some rose petals, something like that. It was put on eBay. So it was bought by somebody out in Oregon at an estate sale from a woman who had escaped the Holocaust, and she bought it in Italy, I believe. And then stuff started happening to him, like bad dreams, shadow figures, just really bad stuff. And every time he tried to give the box away to somebody, including his mom, he tried to give it to his mom. Bad stuff happened to all of them. None of them could sleep. None of them liked being around this box. So he put it on eBay, put the whole story on eBay, was completely transparent about it. And somebody else bought it. I think it was, I can't remember his name, but it was like a college kid somewhere in the U.S. They kept it for a while. Then, they started having the same thing, shadows, headaches, just general malaise. So they put it on eBay themselves and added their story to this cursed object. And then the third person got it, and he was a professor. I can't remember what state he was at, but he was a professor. He made a kind of a bigger deal about the box. He made a website for it. He claimed that there was some bad stuff happening from the box, but mostly good stuff was happening to him. It was making him de-age, this Dybbuk box. And it became so famous, like every time they sold on eBay, it would sell for more money and more money and more money. And then eventually, the last person to buy it was Zach Bagans is his name, who is the lead host of Ghost Adventurers, which is a hugely popular show for the Travel Channel. He's made multi-millions as a result. He just opened up a museum of cursed and haunted objects out in Las Vegas, which I got to visit before everything shut down. He has it on display, so I get to see it on display. And it's in a room by itself. It's spookily lit. It's got a ring of salt and a ring of some kind of herb around it to keep it shut. It's in a glass case. But you walk up to it, and it's just a little box, and it's cracked open a little bit, right? So the tour guide tells you, it's opening a little bit, and the salt is a little bit disturbed. So it's a big show around it. And it didn't look like anything. It looked like a box to me. And then digging deeper, it turns out that there's no such thing as a Dybbuk box in the history of Jewish lore. Dybbuk is basically a perverted spirit in Jewish lore. But they didn't have any kind of like genie in the bottle legends, like other cultures do. So there's no such thing as a Dybbuk box in Jewish lore. And then on top of that, it probably wasn't a wine cabinet. It was, I think it was somebody did some research and found out it was because it's small. It doesn't even seem like it fits a bottle or bottles. It was a whiskey display cabinet that was made in New York much later than than the Holocaust or whatever. So there's that doubtful. And then the original person, the person in Oregon who put it on eBay himself, it turned out he was a horror author, and he kind of made up the whole story. So, but despite all that, it's gotten so famous that nobody cares about the fake parts of it. So it's kind of taken on a life its own. Its story is almost more interesting now that it's fake. But Zach Bagans, everybody who's been around it will claim it's not fake. And in fact, the biggest story about it in recent times is Post Malone, the famous singer. There's video of him freaking out about visiting this box by himself with Zach. Freaking out, running out. There's like black and white footage of him running out of this room, terrified to death. And then over the course of the next few weeks, he was in a plane crash, a car crash. Somebody looted his house. He went through a series of bad situations that everybody blamed on this Dybbuk box. So some people say, it's a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, well, it used to be a hoax, but now it's taken on a life of its own, and now it actually is cursed. And so it's this weird kind of twisted story that, you can believe what you want about it, but the truth is probably somebody made it up, and then we all made a big deal out of it, and now it's hard to walk back that big deal.
But what does this say about the paranormal itself, then? Just using this cabinet as an example, where the story grows and grows and grows. But when you do the research and you actually find out the truth behind it, it's established as a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is being perpetrated with this one object and a curse being part of the paranormal, how does this make the world of the paranormal look to people who say, oh, if this is a hoax, just imagine how much other stuff in the paranormal is hoax, or how much stuff on those TV shows is just more hoax, poo.
Yeah, I think that's completely valid. In my own kind of career of searching out paranormal stuff, most of the time the story is exactly that. It's either a hoax, it's vague, you can't find the original documentation, the original stories. But I think what the paranormals would say is that might be true of a percentage of them, or even a large percentage of them, but doesn't make it all untrue. And for a long time there, I was like, I kind of took that kind of rationalization with a grain of salt. But now we see in non-paranormal culture the same thing happening, right? With fake news, with the spread of disinformation, the spread of science disbelief. So the same thing is happening in non-paranormal circles, where a lot of what you read about something is hard to believe, or if you dig deep enough, it's not true. So it's not alone in that. So it can take, I think it can take solace in the fact that it's like everything else in life. A lot of BS, but who knows about the not BS part.
But when it comes to the paranormal is a lot older than fake news is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that the possibility of the intent to defraud is a lot higher in the world of the paranormal than it is when it comes to fake news.
And probably easier. I mean, I thought about this a few times in my travels, especially for cursed objects, where I know I can take, I tell the story about the cursed cur in my office here, but I could take anything in this room, make up a story in it, put it in this book, and honestly, no one would be the wiser. And then if I can keep that story alive long enough, and get it passed around long enough, and get it added to by other people long enough, it can literally live on its own. You put that little kind of seed out in the world, and it can grow into this, big story that lots of people believe, or that some people, still, at the very least, sit on the fence about. Don't even call out as BS move on my part. So it is really easy to start lore, unfortunately.
I've often said that the belief is the strongest power in the universe, because if you believe something strong enough, you can actually make it happen or convince others that it has happened. You and I have to take our break in a couple of seconds, but I'd just like to remind our listeners right now that our guest this hour is J.W. Ocker. He is an author that we're talking about his book this hour entitled Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. And his website is www.oddthingsi'veseen.com. That's www.oddthingsi'veseen.com. And listen, Exo Nation, the month of October is traditionally Halloween month here in the X-Zone. We have ghost experts. We have haunted ghost tour leaders who are going to come on and tell us about their cities and the haunted locations. And then we have some other special guests who are going to be coming on to share their own personal experiences and how Halloween has affected their life. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. And I'll be back with my special guest this hour, J.W. Ocker, as we wrap up this hour from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Gave me a wink. Said I'm gonna make it up right here in the sink. It smelled like turpentine and looked like Indian ink. I held my nose, I closed my eyes, I took a drink. I didn't know if it would stay all night. Oh, ho, ho, it's
And welcome back. I am Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Check us out on our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And for all the broadcast scheduling of our many great shows on the X Zone Broadcast Network, where you can listen 7/24, 365 with our compliments at www.xzbn.net. J.W. Ocker is our special guest this hour. His website is oddthingsi'veseen.com. And we're talking about his most recent book this hour, entitled Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. First of all, J.W., thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Congratulations on what I can only see as a very interesting book. But I have to ask you this. With your book, does there come a curse?
There does, actually. This is something I would really wanted to happen. I thought about actually seeing if the publisher would allow the actual printing press to get cursed so that every book would be a cursed object.
Yeah.
Turned out that was a little bit hard to do, so we did the next best thing. We included in the book a book curse, which is something that medieval scribes used to do. So medieval scribes would take, months to copy a book, right? Because no Xerox, no published, no Gutenberg press back then.
Mm-hmm.
They would take forever to do it. They would do it well. They would do eliminated manuscripts. And then they would try to save that book. That book was a precious resource, and there was only one copy of it. So they would, lock it to shelves. They would do everything physical they could do to keep that book from being stolen. But then they would also curse the book. They would put a little kind of curse in the front where anybody that stole the book, bad things would happen to them. So we took one of those curses from that time period and put it right in the book. So basically, the book isn't cursed unless you steal it. So if you steal the book, the consequences are you're going to get your eyes pecked out by ravens. It's old world English, so I'm paraphrasing. You're going to get your eyes pecked out by ravens, and you're going to get hung on a gallows. That's the consequences for stealing the book. If you buy it, you're fine. You're no problems at all. But if you steal it, you're in a little bit of hot water.
God, talk about harsh justice. Woo!
Yeah. My
I love
aesthetic
it.
is ravens and gallows. So
I love it. I love it. How many books all told have you written over the years, Jay?
Cursed Object is my 7th book. So, I've written four nonfiction travelogues that are all kind of spooky and macabre.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've written a children's horror novel and an adult horror novel.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. As an author, when you're writing a book and you have a writer's block, how do you circumvent it? How do you get rid of that block?
Oh, I never get those, especially as a nonfiction writer. The burden is a little bit different than when I had the fiction hat on, but the stories I write about are out there. Like I don't have to worry about making them up on the page. The characters, the mysteries, the interest, the plot twists, they're all out there already, and all it takes is me researching. So if I don't have a topic I'm researching at the time, I mean, we live in the era of instant information. I can find something to research. There's a lot of internet holes to fall down. So I never have a moment where I'm like, man, I have nothing to write about. I usually have a backlog of hundreds and hundreds of experiences that I haven't written about that I need to get to at some point, either for my website or for a book in the future. But yeah, it's not an issue for nonfiction writers, I don't think.
So how did you select the stories that you incorporated in your latest book, Cursed Objects? I'm sure you must have other stories that were not included. And what was the criteria to be in your book or to be put aside for a later project?
Oh, great question. This is a good question because one of the first things I had to do was sit down and define what a cursed object was. Which sounds easy, right? We all know what a cursed object is, but really, well, first of all, it had to be an object. Like I didn't want to do anything. Anything can be cursed. The bad news is anything can be cursed.
Right.
A person, a place. I wanted it to be objects, not people or places, because I had the idea that you could just at any point pick up something from the flea market or an antique shop and not know it's cursed and bring it into your house. So that was my criteria as far as the object goes. And with some exceptions, it generally is true. It's chairs, it's dolls, it's that kind of thing. But cursed is hard because there's haunted objects. A lot of these lists out there list a lot of haunted objects. And what I found in those stories was haunted objects usually don't harm you. Haunted, ghosts, there's not a lot of harm from ghosts. There's a lot of spooky, creepy from ghosts. But a good example of that is the mirror at the Myrtle Plantation in Louisiana, which I've been to. It's a cursed object, but all that happens is, handprints appear in the mirror and you can see shadow people in the mirror, which is really creepy, really spooky. But doesn't really hurt you. On cursed objects, that harm, death, or harm to your life, usually it's death, but also any kind of harm, is very important to it. So it had to be a cursed object. It had to be cursed. It had to hurt you. It also had to kind of have a supernatural story to it because, again, an object that harms you or harms lots of people, it actually needs to harm lots of people. It could be a gun. You know, a gun can do that. So it had to be supernatural as well. And then that was the easy. But finding famous cursed objects was hard. Like if I just opened it up to any cursed object story I heard anywhere, randomly, you know, from a friend online, there's a lot out there, but I wanted things with actual histories behind them. So even if you don't believe the paranormal, you've got to see 100 years of history represented in one object. And there's not a lot out there. There's I think we found about 50. And, you know, it was hard to find those. Some of them are pretty obvious. Like we said, King Tut, Hope Diamond, easy to find. But then we had to really dig to find, you know, Little Nanny, which is this little stone figure out in the UK, or to talk about the Hexam heads. Or it wasn't easy to fill this book. Like if it had been a book about haunted houses, like find all the most famous haunted houses, I would need like a set of books to write that. So we came up with about 50 of them. So that kind of limited itself. And then we cut out a few that were, you know, either too vague or one that was a little bit too vicious. We kept the Red Room. We was a little bit too vicious. So I posted that on my website, that story. But it just didn't fit kind of the tone, which the tone is, you know, wonder, humor, and, you know, interest in spooky things was the tone. So we didn't want to get too vicious and violent for some of this stuff.
Well, you know, you talked about hauntings before. And this leads me to this question. Is a haunted house cursed? Where the ghosts or the spirits or the entities just do not leave. They remain there. And, you know, they make allegedly they make their presence known. So could we say that this house is cursed?
So in my definitions, and the way I defined it, a haunted object could be a cursed object. But the criteria would be that haunted house had to hurt multiple people. So if it wasn't actually hurting people, like literal physical harm, or not physical, but like physical harm, any kind of harm, it's not cursed. If it's just spooking them or making them run out of the house or giving them white hair, it's not cursed. But if people died in that house, you can call that a cursed
okay,
house.
but taking the fact that the house is haunted, it may not be hurting anyone from this reality that goes into the house, but the fact that it keeps spirits or ghosts or whatever at that location and does not let them escape.
So afterlife harm, that is interesting.
Exactly.
That might fall into the definition. So post death harm.
Right.
That might be cursed. Yeah. I mean, I definitely found objects. I found one object for this book that actually seemed to curse itself. Like it got broken more than it hurt people. So I could definitely see that as well. That's an interesting twist on it, I think.
Yeah, my producer said, there's my wedding ring again. Oh, he's going to get divorced soon. I can see that coming, and I'm not a psychic. What's up next for you, my friend?
So next I go back to the fiction world. I've got a book coming out this summer. It's a children's horror novel. So my next couple of books will be children's horror novels. And then I'm always writing nonfiction on my website, oddthingsiveseen.com. So I never stop visiting stuff. It's all based on my own travels. It's not just folklore or stuff I've heard. I have to visit it myself. So that's where, if you want to see nonfiction from me, post-curse objects for the foreseeable future of next year, go to oddthingsiveseen.com. I'm always writing about weird stuff I've seen.
Where are your books available? Where can our listeners buy your books?
Everywhere. You can get them on Amazon. You can buy a lot of the indies have them. The indies will order them for you for sure. They're all kind of publicly available anywhere you buy the best books.
As an author, what is it that you'd like to see readers of your book, especially this book, Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items, what would you like them to take away after reading your book?
I think it's true of all my books, but certainly of Cursed Objects, I want them to walk away with an I didn't know that moment, or even multiple I didn't know that moments. Because what I found in my own life, every time I learn something that I didn't know, it expands my world, right? Like I didn't even know, not even I didn't know that, but I didn't even know that was possible to happen in real life. So you have enough of those moments, and then your perspective just broadens, and the world gets richer and more interesting and not boring. Like I said earlier in the interview, that's what I want. I didn't know that was even possible. Is the reaction I want at least once in the pages of this book.
What I like about what you're doing is you're tying a lot of rich history into these objects. So not only are your readers, in my opinion, getting entertained, they're getting enlightened, but they're also getting an education in certain areas that you touch, and that's commendable.
Thank you. I think another thing is I would like people to go visit this stuff. A lot of this stuff is in museums. A lot of it is legit art has legit historical value, which means they end up in museums. So if it inspires somebody to go see something, I'm super happy with that as well.
But you're scaring the hell out of people by telling them that if they go there, they're liable to suffer the curse as well.
I know. Some of us are just morbidly inclined, though, you know?
I love it. I love it. What does your family think about the work you do?
They're into it. They usually are around in all my travels. I mean, I've even moved them as part of the book. I wrote a book about Salem, Massachusetts, where I moved all of them. I have a family of 5. Back then it was 4.
Wow.
We moved to downtown Salem the entire month of October and just lived that life, and so I could write that book. So they like it. They're not as into it as me, probably. Like few people could be as into it as me, I guess, but they put up with it. They let me do it. Put it that way.
If you could do something else besides being an author, and a great author at that, what would you be?
I would like to be able to build houses. Like, I feel like if you can build a house by yourself, you can do pretty much anything. And to me, it's a skill that I've always kind of been in full awe of. So I wish I could do that, but my hands are like, they only hit keyboards.
You may not build houses, my friend, but you do build great books. What's your final thought for our audience tonight?
Final thought for the audience, I would say go down internet holes. All these stories that I'm a professional writer and traveler, but like I started out not being a professional writer and traveler. Just go out and see stuff, go out and read about stuff. And, that's the start of so many beautiful experiences, even if you don't get to find ghosts.
JW, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, and we have to get you back on because we still have other books to talk about that you've written. I'd really like to talk to you about Witch, the Magic and Mayhem of Halloween in Salem, especially since Halloween is next month. Can you give us, in about 1 minute, a capsulated version of how you foresee Halloween in Salem?
I was just in Salem this weekend, and it's going to be pretty much the same. A lot of people. They won't be able to stop tourists. But everybody will be in masks, hopefully. A lot of the bars are shut down. It's a very constrained Salem from the civic side, but I don't think that's going to stop the tourists. It's really hard to stop a Salem tourist.
What's your opinion of the COVID crisis?
I don't even know. Like I just want it to be over.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Whatever is the truth of the data.
Yeah.
I just want it to be over.
Same here. Once again, many thanks, and once again, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can buy your book.
Sure. If you go to oddthingsiveseen.com, that's the hub of my entire life. You can, from there, there's links to where you can buy the books. There's information about me. It's all on that site.
And that's at www.oddthingsiveseen.com. JW, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I look forward to the next time you join us back here in the X-Zone to talk more about your books and your travels and what you've seen and what you haven't.
Yeah, it'd be great. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Take care of yourself. Happy Halloween, my friend.
You too.
All right, X-Zone Nation, once again, JW Ocker has been my guest this hour. Great conversation. Entertainment, enlightenment, and history, all in one book. That's rare these days. Once again, the name of the book that we talked about this hour, Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. And the website is www.oddthingsiveseen.com. And for my producer, Craig, no, Craig, you cannot sell your wedding ring on eBay. No one wants it. Not even your wife, apparently. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to the X-Zone radio show around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network. And if you're listening to us either on the radio, you can listen to us on Alexa, Siri, and all the other great platforms. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
One last call for alcohol, so finish your whiskey or beer. Closing time, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay